Okay, in part three of Congress here, we're going to focus on gerrymandering. Okay, sometimes it's called gerrymandering. I call it gerrymandering. Potato, potato, tomato, tomato. Same thing. So gerrymandering is it's a way to draw up electoral districts. The districts where people vote and send one person to be their representative in the United States House of Representatives. Okay. As we go through this, it's going to seem like this is a shady practice. Both parties do it. It is kind of shady, but it's perfectly legal. Okay, so gerrymandering. After a census, there's something that's called reapportionment. Okay, we're going to do this next year in the country because we took the census in 2020. So every 10 years we take a census, count how many people are in the United States, and then they reapportion the districts. So the only thing the law says, and the Supreme Court has said this in Baker versus Carr, a decision, you don't need to worry about that yet. That was a decision from the 1960s. Basically said, as long as these districts are roughly equal in population size, you're good. They're perfectly legal. It doesn't say that they have to be perfectly square or they have to include cities and rural areas. They can be as crazy. You can see this one in the background here. This is in Maryland. How crazy this is and why they draw them up this way. We'll get to that in a minute. But so what they do is Congress gets the official census count, and they divide up how many representatives there are, 435, divided by the population, total population of the United States. And that's how many should be in a district, okay, whatever that number is. It's something like 400,000 per district. So what they do then is then tell the states, okay, here's how many representatives you get to send. If a state's population increases faster than other states, they'll get more representatives. Some of the fastest growing states in the United States are Nevada and Arizona and Georgia, what they call the Sun Belt. Those areas will probably get a couple of more representatives. Well, states like Ohio, that we grow in population, but we don't grow as fast as those Sun Belt states, we will probably lose a representative. We'll have one less electoral district, which means we'll have one less person to send to Congress. That means they have to reshuffle the districts in Ohio. And what they do, if they do it in a way, if they redraw the district lines, they do it every 10 years, if they do it in a way that favors one party over another, it's called gerrymandering. Okay, like I said, it's perfectly legal. Both parties do it. Okay. These districts are drawn up by the politicians in the state. So the people that benefit from this, at least party-wise, are the ones that are put in charge of it. So whoever has the majority in a state where they redraw the electoral district lines every 10 years, that majority party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, basically calls the shots on what these districts are going to look like. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. In the 2010 census, Ohio lost one representative. We also lost an electoral college vote as well. But we lost one representative. So the Republicans were in charge. So of course they're going to redraw the districts in a way where the person that's no longer going to be in the House of Representatives is going to be a Democrat. So they're going to take a Democrat's district and break it up and put it into the surrounding areas. Okay, that's called gerrymandering. Okay, it creates safe seats. Basically, doesn't matter who runs, that person, whether in that party, if it's a gerrymandered district, let's say if it's a Democratic gerrymandered district, it can be, whoever runs as a Democrat is almost guaranteed to get that seat. I read somewhere that there's the estimates that there's 75% of the seats in Congress are safe seats. That's how widespread this practice is. Now, Ohio has done something different. We passed a constitutional amendment in Ohio, added it to our state constitution, that takes kind of takes this out of the hands of the state legislators redrawing these districts and actually puts it in the hands. Citizens are on this committee that redraw these district lines. So it's not just the state politicians, but it's also a group of citizens that are on this. So they have to do it in a way. I think gerrymandering may disappear over time in Ohio. Okay, but we passed this constitutional amendment, I believe, in 2012. And the first time this is going to happen is after the next census, which is 2020 this year. So when they redraw the district lines next year, they'll have more citizen input into that. Now, let me show you some of the most gerrymandered districts in the United States. The first one we're going to look at is one in North Carolina. Okay, here we go. This is, if you see District 1 and District, I think that's it's 12. There's an arrow pointing to it. Okay, these are actually racially gerrymandered. These are districts that were created to create what they call majority-minority districts. I know that sounds like a contradiction in terms, but these are areas where African-American voters are concentrated in North Carolina. And rather than dilute their votes, I mean, look at 12 here, rather than dilute their votes into District 9 and District 8, which are Republican areas, they created these majority minority districts. So this is a district that is made up, the majority of the district are minority voters. In this case, it's North Carolina African Americans. They did the same thing in 4, and I think 1 as well. Okay, so that's gerrymandering, not necessarily benefit a party, but to benefit, to get more diversity in Congress. And several states have done this, and it's worked. It's actually brought in more African Americans into the House of Representatives. Okay, now let's take a look at Maryland. Okay, so I would say that North Carolina is fairly gerrymandered. You can see it's all these areas. These are rural areas in North Carolina, and these are areas, mainly rural areas, send Republicans to Washington, D.C., and cities tend to send Democrats to Washington, D.C. That's not 100% across the board, but that's how it is, at least in North Carolina. Now look at Maryland. Maryland is a state that's gerrymandered the favored Democrats. Okay, and this is a hypothetical situation where if they can redraw their lines, you can see what they do is they take 1 and 2 and 7, and this is a hypothetical situation here where they would take those districts and take what is predominantly a Republican district in 4, break it up into areas around it, that's gerrymandering, and actually make that Republican district disappear and put it into areas it basically, it's kind of hard to explain. It dilutes a Republican area, takes it and splits it into like 3, 2, 1, and 5. And see, they took 1 and they moved it over here a little more. So it dilutes those votes, and it makes it almost impossible for the Republican voters in that district, what used to be a district, to send a representative of their party to Congress. So it waters down or dilutes those votes. Okay, Pennsylvania is a very gerrymandered state as well. Let's see, I want to show you. Let's see. I hope they have Illinois on here. Okay. Oh, this is Ohio. This is a district right up here that was up until 2010. This was Dennis Kucinich was a Democrat that was always he had been a member of Congress for decades. Was always somebody who won in this district, and it was actually taken out after the 2010 census because the Republicans were in charge. They gerrymandered this district, and they made basically Kucinich's district disappear. You can see that our area, the first district of Ohio, which includes Hamilton County, which is a very Democratic county, And then out here in Warren County, they redrew that district because Steve Shabbat, who was the Republican representative from this area, when this area was mainly Hamilton County, he lost. He lost in 2012 to a guy I went to high school with, Steve Driehaus, and they gerrymandered his district. I'm sorry, that was in 2008 that he lost. He lost his seat. Then they gerrymandered his district to include a rural area right here. So these voters counteract the voters, the Republican voters here counteract the Democratic voters that are here. So it's, if you look at a map of the 2020 election, Steve Shabbat won again, but he lost a lot of areas in Hamilton County, precincts in Hamilton County, but he more than made up for those in the areas in Warren County, the rural areas in Warren County. Okay, so that's basically how gerrymandering works, and it creates safe seats. A lot of folks feel that this is this really dilutes democracy. If it creates areas, districts that one party dominates, and that's not very democratic. So more and more states are moving to what Ohio is doing, which includes to take the politicians out of creating electoral districts. Okay. This week, you're going to play the gerrymandering game. It's an online digital game where you try to gerrymander or ungerrymander districts. It's really hard. I've only had one student in about 5 years actually win that game because it's so hard to do. Okay? The other thing you're going to take a look at this week are committees in Congress. Okay? And we talked about those earlier. Committees are smaller groups of legislators that specialize in an area. Okay, so the House and the Senate both do this. It's more important in the House because there's so many members of the House of Representatives. So if you're in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, you deal with our relations with other countries. And a lot of those committees have subcommittees. Where are they here? I don't have subcommittees on here. But, think of an area like, let's say it's a committee on foreign affairs. They might make a subcommittee that focuses solely on Asia or China or North Korea or something like that. Okay? Now, these committees, most of them are standing committees. That doesn't mean that they have to stand the whole time and they don't have any chairs in their committee room. What that means is those committees are permanent. They are always in existence. Think about issues that we always have: taxes, spending, education, foreign affairs, the military. Those kind of things are those issues. They have committees on those issues because those have been around. It's not a temporary issue. It's a permanent issue. Those are standing committees. Okay, the House has 19, and they have 89 subcommittees off of those standing committees. The Senate has 17 with 69 subcommittees. The Appropriation Committee is one of the most powerful ones. In the House of Representatives, the most powerful committee is the Rules Committee. They set all the rules for debate and what bills come up for vote and so forth. But the second most powerful is the Appropriation Committee. They appropriate money. So any bill that spends or collects money has to go through that committee. That's a very powerful committee to be on. Sometimes there's joint committees. Joint committees are made up of both House and Senate members. In a couple months, we're going to have the inauguration, the 2021 inauguration on January 20th. There's a subcommittee that will be, a joint committee that will be put together of members of the House and the Senate to plan that inauguration. Okay? There's a joint committee in the lawmaking process called a conference committee that works out differences between Senate and House bills. Remember, the Senate and the House have to pass the exact same version of the exact same bill. If they can't do that, then this committee, this conference committee, gets together. It's a form of a joint committee, and they iron out the differences between the bill and make it passable in both the House and the Senate. There's also special and select committees. Okay, these are kind of the same. These are temporary committees. The committee I was just talking about for the inauguration, that is a special committee. It's made up for a special occasion, the inauguration, and it's temporary because once the inauguration happens, it's planned and it happens, that committee isn't needed anymore. Okay? All right. So that's it for this PowerPoint. Make sure that you go through and fill out the chart to make sure that you tell me what you understand and what you need help on and what questions you have.